Thank you, Shantari ma'am, for that inspiring welcome. Despite Kunal's Punjabi enthusiasm and the jhalak of Bhangada that we saw here, I don't think at my age of 81 plus, I can do all that. I can only talk. I can't go around doing that. The theme, I was a little puzzled by the theme of today's conclave. What did it say? It says security beyond obscurity, cracking the complexity code. I know that all of you ladies and gentlemen gathered here are experts on cybersecurity. So I was thinking that I'm not an expert on cybersecurity. Why have I been called to address this gathering as a keynote speaker? Then it occurred to me that what is all this security about? हम जिस चीज को सिक्योर करते हैं, पैसा है, gold, silver, of course, jewelry, house, property, that is what we secure, isn't it? You want to keep secure all that is precious to you, all that is very, very valuable to you. So when you all do this cyber security, what are you really securing? You are securing the data of your customers in order to ensure that it does not go into wrong hands. Now this is where the whole issue begins. About 15-20 years ago, nobody had a concept of what this data is and why it should be secured. There were all kinds of judicial thinking as to whether there was a right of privacy at all. What is this right of privacy? My right of privacy is to have my data secure and not being taken away by somebody without my authorization. That is the right of privacy. Way back, the Madras High Court had a very interesting situation where somebody's marriage proposal was being done and the girl's father contacted the prospective bridegroom's doctor to find out if he had any diseases, and it turned out that the man had HIV, AIDS disease. It was transferred to, this information was transferred to the bride's father, and that became a big issue. So the matter ultimately landed up in the court as to whether there is this right of privacy as far as medical data was concerned. There were also several other issues before the high courts in different areas, one of them before the Punjab High Court also in the good old days, as to whether a person has a right to remain away from surveillance if he is not really a criminal. Now, there were conflicting judgments, and the situation as to data privacy was somewhat complex or obscure, as you put it in your theme. Then comes on the scene something very interesting. The government of India decides at all that it will start a department which will start issuing data cards, which you call them Aadhaar cards. Government of India, as we have noticed always, has this habit of putting the cart before the horse. If they had first made a law on data and then got in the Aadhaar, things would have been very simple. But then, as we all know, all kinds of incidents make all kinds of laws. This Aadhaar card was challenged. It was challenged on the ground that it infringes the person's privacy. It was also argued before the court that a person's privacy is a fundamental right. The Supreme Court for the first time was confronted with an issue whether there is something called a right of privacy which is a fundamental right. Now, such of you who have bothered to read the Constitution of India would have noticed that in part 3 of the Constitution, there are a number of enumerated fundamental rights. You will not find right of privacy anywhere. So what did the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court looked at Article 21. 21 is the fundamental right to life and liberty. They said, hey, life, if fundamental right to life is there, this must be a life of not animal existence, but human dignified existence. And privacy is an essential part of it. So like a experienced magician pulling out a rabbit out of a hat, the Supreme Court said, hey, there is Article 21. I think from here you can derive this right of privacy as a fundamental right. Lo and behold, that created a whole lot of complications. Now that is the complexity, that is the reason which our people are still trying to unravel. Now, one of the interesting things that happened when the Supreme Court was hearing is, a judge very innocently asked this question to the arguing counsel of the government of India and said, but where is the law on privacy in our country? So everybody looked around and said, but where is the law? There is no law at all. So immediately I get an SOS telephone call from the law minister saying that the Supreme Court wants to know by, it was a Friday evening, and I was about to go to New York by Monday or Tuesday. Where is the law on privacy? What should we do? We have decided to form a committee of experts to go into this question, who will decide what should be the contours of the law, and I want you to be the chairman. I said, I'm about to go on a vacation for 2 months because I had completed some other assignment and I was tired. He said, नहीं अब जाके आ जाइए, लेकिन ये देश के लिए आपको करना पड़ेगा. हमने कहा ठीक है, देश के लिए तो हमने बहुत सारी चीजें की है, ये भी कर लेंगे, चलो. And then I went and then this committee started and all that. After about 18 months or so, we produced a bill of 2018. Even if I am a little immodest, a fairly good bill which could have taken care of most of the problems in the country. Now, as is the habit with our government, experts in the government, this bill was subjected to all kinds of tweaking and chopping and chewing by a committee of bureaucrats who turned out the 2019 bill. That 2019 bill was so atrocious that I took one look at it and told them, in a public interview, I told them that if this bill comes through, we'll all go back to the Orwellian state where the big brother will continuously keep on snooping on you. Now, that created a little bit of difficulty, so it was passed on to the Joint Parliamentary Committee. The Joint Parliamentary Committee then again did a lot of patchwork, chewing and chopping and screwing up the whole thing and made about 81 recommendations. If all that was implemented, the original bill would have completely lost its identity. So somebody asked me and I said, there is a very fine saying in Sanskrit. It says, Vinayakam prakurvano rachayamasa vanaram. Somebody went on to, sat down to make a Ganesh ji ka murti. He was saying, I'm doing it beautifully. Somebody came and gave me this advice. Somebody gave him that advice. Isko idhar thoda kicho, usko udhar thoda kam karo, isko ghatao badhao. And ultimately what turned out? Rachayamasa vanaram. He turned out to be a monkey word and not the Ganesh ji. So this is exactly what I said. You chaps have gone and done. You're really monkeyed with it. Now, that must have gone home to somebody. So ultimately they decided, abhi band karo, sab nikal ke phek do. Abhi we'll start again. This reminds me that when we were small kids in the school, the maths teacher would give us a maths problem. So clever boys like us would start. First step 1, step 2, step 3. Itna ghotala ho jata tha. He ultimately says, skip sab phek dalo. We'll start again from step 1. This is exactly what has happened. The government of India has now started with step 1. I don't know what the step 1 is. I'm told that it is going on somewhere in the powers along with a group of powers that be. Now, the point that I really want to make is not about the history of data privacy in this country. There are two fundamental propositions which I want to lay before this audience. This is very intelligent, scholarly, but at the same time friendly audience. I normally say it is either scholarly friends or friendly scholars. First of all, every discovery, every invention that is made by a scientist is for what purpose? For the simple purpose of making human life more convenient and achieve the ultimate goal of happiness. Look at any invention, whether it is the X-ray or even the atomic bomb. All that was invented for human beings. Nobody can say human beings were invented for the purpose of the atomic bomb or for jet propulsion or anything of that sort. Second proposition, All laws in the country are meant for what? After all, what is a law? A law is nothing but an orderly method of interpersonal transaction in society. Now, why do you need law? Why do you need a red light, traffic light? So that when you cross a four-way junction, the other chap won't come in to bang into you, or a pedestrian will not suddenly cut across. This is the purpose of the law. Of course, there are other more complicated laws. I'm not talking about them right now. Therefore, law is basically an orderly methodology of transaction of interpersonal relations in society. Again, what is the focus? Human beings. So whichever way you look, law is for human beings. Inventions, discovery, technology, everything, whether it is supercomputers or ordinary mobile phones, they are intended for human beings. If that is so, how can you do something by ignoring the human beings? This is exactly the problem that I have posed before the government. I am posing it before you. If you make a law, who should be the person for whose benefit you are making the law? I have always said a situation like this is like a triangle. At the top apex is the human being for whom you are doing all this activity. One side is the state or the government, because the government also has to have some rights in the matter, otherwise there will be chaos. And the third apex is trade and industry, because they are absolutely needed. Now, if you start with trade and industry and for their benefit you are doing things, you are ignoring the top apex, which is the human being whose benefit you are taking away. If therefore, now your theme is the complexity, the obscurity, and how to unravel the complexity. If honestly the complexity is to be unraveled, first and foremost, think of the rights of the human beings in the country, whether they are fundamental rights or not. The Supreme Court has already given its imprimatur. Now, with that in mind, you design a law in such a way that you do not violate the fundamental law unless it is absolutely necessary. The Supreme Court gave us 3 principles. They said no fundamental right, this is in that famous judgment known as Puttaswamy judgment, no fundamental right can be infringed unless there is a competent law made by a competent legislature. Number 1, no Babu can make an order and take away your fundamental right. Parliament or a state legislature has to legislate. Number 2, the law must declare why it is necessary to infringe the fundamental right. Number 3, you should not be disproportionate to what is the objective to be achieved. I always give an example and say, if I want to kill a mosquito or a fly, simple thing, use either a fly swatter or some kind of pellets that you use. Are you going to use an atom bomb to kill a fly? If you do that, that is disproportionate. This is precisely the matrix in which the law has to be designed. Now, if it is designed in this matrix, such a law can of course be upheld, even if it gives some leeway to the security agencies. Now, all this is necessary to be said because the work that you do for security is to protect this privacy. Now, privacy can be of 2 types. One is the individual's data privacy, the other is enterprise or entity privacy. Now, a company has certain data. Now, a company has 2 types of data. One would be the employee's data, personal data, which would again fall within the personal data matrix. The other is company's data. Company data again may be of 2 types. One is protected by IPR. Your processes, trade processes, inventions, etc. are protected by the intellectual property regime. Now, there may be something that is not protected by intellectual property regime. Now, let's say a company decides as a matter of policy for the next 5 years, what is going to be the sourcing of my raw materials? Which are the countries from I'm going to import things? What is going to be the sourcing of my financial assets? What is going to be the expected profits to be generated? What is going to be the strength of the company? These are all matters which are kept in record. Board of directors decide on this, pass resolutions. This is all data. Of course it is data, there is no doubt about that. And imagine if this can be accessed by somebody without the company's Excuse me for a moment, please. Companies consent, there will be disaster. Therefore, the law has to take care that this kind of data is not accessed unless an absolute necessity arises. There may be data of a different kind. For example, a lot of data is generated on the pattern of weather somewhere, climate pattern, land issues, what kind of agricultural produce is there in a particular tract. Now, this could be public data. Now you are all used to Google Maps. Google Maps is created out of all public data, and there is also, we also have this concept of community data. Everybody has given. Now the man who runs a tea stall somewhere has someday put that data, so when you see the Google map, it will show you Rama's tea stall on the left hand side when you pass by the highway. That is public data. Everybody is entitled to it. But when it comes to personal data, the law is that it is absolutely protected by fundamental rights. Now, between these two, who has access to what is determined by the concept, the basic concept, what I call the basic line of consent. You can't take something from me without my consent is the fundamental principle. Now, if these principles are achieved, whatever law is, I have no difficulty in saying that such law will of course be upheld, and we will all benefit therefrom, instead of having this jagda of somebody saying that this law is illegal, this law is not illegal. Therefore, these are the fundamental concepts. A, what are you designing this law for the human being, for the citizens and residents of this country? What is their right? This is a fundamental right, protected to what extent? It is non-fundamental right. Don't take it away without their consent, but use it in such a manner that it benefits them. These are some of the abstract propositions that are really complex and need to be carefully ascertained and unraveled before a new law can be brought on the statute book. I was told that 20 minutes was the outside limit to which I can talk before an audience like this. I think I've exhausted my 20 minutes. I leave you with these thoughts that who is the person who is at the foremost? The human beings. With this, if you keep in mind, you will design your technology much better, the law will be much better, and even the Bhangra will be much better if you design it for the human being that is going to watch and not to somebody else. Thank you very much. May God bless you. May you all continue to do the good work, and may I have the pleasure of seeing all the good work that is turned out by you for the benefit of this country. Thank you very much.